Today, we gather to examine a policy measure that at first glance might appear to be an isolated trade action: the imposition of a 39% tariff on Swiss gold bars. Yet, as we peel away the surface, we find that this measure is not merely about the flow of bullion, but about the deeper mechanics of monetary hegemony, strategic devaluation, and the long game of currency dominance. Let us begin with a fundamental premise. The United States dollar is not only a unit of account, a medium of exchange, and a store of value. It is, above all, an instrument of geopolitical power. Its status as the world's primary reserve currency underpins U.S. influence over the global financial system. This privilege allows the United States to finance deficits cheaply, project economic power abroad, and dictate the terms of global liquidity. However, this dominance is not static. It must be actively maintained. The paradox we face is that the White House may at times deliberately tolerate or even encourage a degree of dollar devaluation. Why? Because a weaker dollar can make US exports more competitive, stimulate domestic manufacturing, and reduce the real burden of an immense sovereign debt. But herein lies this strategic challenge. How can one allow the currency to weaken without opening the floodgates to alternative stores of value, most notably gold? This is where the Swiss gold tariff enters the picture. Switzerland occupies a unique position in the gold ecosystem. It is home to the largest and most sophisticated refining capacity in the world, producing the high purity bars that underpin both institutional reserves and private wealth protection. In times of monetary uncertainty, Swiss bars are as good as gold, literally and figuratively. By imposing a stiff tariff on these bars, the United States has not merely increased their price in the American market, it has disrupted the primary channel through which investors might flee from the dollar into a tangible non sovereign asset. From a monetary strategy perspective, this is a preemptive containment move. History has shown us that when confidence in fiat currencies wanes, capital seeks refuge in hard assets. During the 1970s, for example, US inflation and dollar weakness coincided with an explosive rise in gold prices. The lesson is clear. If the US intends to manage a controlled devaluation today, it must also control the escape valves that would allow wealth to bypass the dollar entirely. Some might ask, is this not simply protectionism? The answer is more nuanced. Protectionism seeks to shelter domestic industries. Currency defense seeks to shelter the monetary order itself. The tariff on Swiss gold is, therefore, not protectionism in the classic sense, but rather an act of financial statecraft, limiting the appeal and accessibility of a competing store of value. The implications ripple beyond the US borders. Central banks around the world hold gold as part of their reserve diversification strategy. If access to the highest quality, internationally trusted gold becomes more costly and logistically complex for US based buyers and intermediaries, the speed at which reserves can shift away from the dollar is moderated. In other words, the dollar's share of global reserves remains artificially buoyed even in a period of deliberate softening. There is also the psychological dimension. Markets are not only moved by fundamentals, they are moved by perceptions. The US, by targeting Swiss gold specifically, sends a subtle but unmistakable signal that Washington retains both the capacity and the willingness to intervene in alternative asset markets to defend the dollar's primacy. This is a reminder to investors, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks that the dollar's role is supported not just by economic inertia, but by an entire architecture of policy levers. Critics may counter that gold is a global commodity and that a tariff in one jurisdiction cannot truly stifle its appeal. Yet, here too, the point is not total suppression, but marginal friction. In high speed interconnected markets, even small impediments can redirect flows. If US investors find it more costly to acquire Swiss gold, they may be more inclined to hold dollar denominated assets, treasuries, corporate bonds, equities, thus reinforcing demand for the very currency that policymakers are gently allowing to depreciate. This duality, control devaluation alongside hegemonic preservation, is a delicate balancing act. Push the devaluation too far, and the dollar risks a crisis of confidence. Fail to manage it, and the US forfeits the competitive advantages that come with a weaker currency. The tariff serves as one of several instruments in this balancing act, alongside interest rate policy, foreign exchange interventions, and diplomatic engagement with major reserve holders. In this light, the Swiss gold tariff is less about Switzerland and more about Washington's ability to choreograph the dance between value and dominance. It exemplifies what I would term selective monetary containment, allowing some pressures to escape but sealing off the pathways that could lead to structural erosion of the dollar's position. Of course, we must recognize the risks. Such measures may encourage other nations to accelerate their own de-dollarization strategies, to seek gold through alternative channels, or to develop new pricing benchmarks outside US influence. Yet, history suggests that the incumbent currency enjoys a significant advantage so long as there is no ready substitute with equal liquidity, depth, and institutional trust. By making the primary alternative gold less accessible in key markets, the US buys itself more time to manage its economic transitions without ceding the throne. In conclusion, what appears to the casual observer as a technical trade tariff is, in fact, an intricate move in the larger game of currency geopolitics. It is an assertion that the dollar's primacy is not left to the invisible hand of markets alone, but is actively guarded through targeted, sometimes unconventional interventions. It is a reminder that in the hierarchy of policy objectives, preserving the hegemonic currency often takes precedence, even when that currency is by design allowed to bend. So, in the years ahead, we should expect more of these seemingly narrow measures whose true purpose is to shore up the foundations of monetary dominance. The tariff on Swiss gold is not the last chapter in this story, but rather an instructive case study in the how economic goods deploy to serve strategic ends.